Alright, boys and girls, welcome back to another edition of Crush Lusher Television. Okay, so what we're going to do today, we're going to graph a bunch of functions. So we're going to graph y equals sine of 2x and y equals cosine of 2x. So that's your title. Everything is in your notebook right now. So we're going to do a bunch of stuff like this. So first we got to know this, like y equals a sine of bx. So this looks kind of different. So if I'm going to graph this thing right there, I am looking at this. So we never had a number inside the sine function before. We've always had it outside. And the outside is the amplitude. And that tells us how far it stretches or shrinks. So that's the up or down. But here, b has to do with the period, which is the length of one cycle of the wave. Okay, so new stuff right now. So usually this is just the amplitude, so now we just have this. So how are we going to deal with this? Well, we got to know one thing, is that the period is always 2 pi, which is generally what the period is normally for sine and cosine, divided by b. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that means right now, okay? So here, all the stuff in your notes, star this, highlight this, very importante. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our unit circle, bam, right here, or just get it in front of you. So when we graph sine or cosine, the most important points, the most relevant points are 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and back to 2 pi. Now we're going to write the points. So this is 1, 0. Write it with me. Everything I write, you write. 0, 1, negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. We also know that the cosine is the x, and the sine is the y. That's going to help us out. Okay, so in order to do this, I need to. So I'm going to graph first y equals sine 2x. Okay, just the graph down here. I'm going to get my x and y chart if I want. So let's do x here, y here, doesn't matter. If you do theta or sine of theta, we do x and y. That's fine for right now. So we're going to do this. Doot, doot, doot. Now we need a chart. Okay. Now we're going to do theta. Let's do theta here. And let's do 2 theta here. And sine of 2 theta. Okay? So everything, if I'm going to graph this thing, everything resides in the chart. If you can get the chart, then everything else is easy, okay? So first thing we got to do is all the relevant points or radians. Actually, let's fix this. Let's go theta here, and let's go sine of theta here. So that looks a little bit better. So we have 0, then we go around the circle, right? Pi over 2. You should memorize this by now. Pi, because we probably just had a quiz on it. Oh, yeah. 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi. Bam. Okay, so there I am with that. Now, so since the amplitude doesn't change, I'm just going to write the regular. So if this were sine of theta, sine of 2 theta, it's going to have the same values. So if I imagine this is sine of theta, so that's the y, isn't it? So that's 0, 0. Pi over 2, 1. Pi is 0. 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. And 2 pi is 0 back there. Okay. So there we're at. So what's going to change is the period, which is this right here. So let's see how that's going to change. So off to the side, I know I got a lot of writing on the board, but you can deal with it, no problem. So now I'm going to use this thing right here. The period is going to change. So it's not going from 0 to 2 pi anymore. Okay? So we're going to do the period is 2 pi divided by b. In this case, b is 2, right? Right in here. So I'm going to divide it by 2. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. And so my period is now pi. Okay, what does that mean? So now instead of going from 0 to 2 pi here, I'm actually going to go 0 to pi. Bam. Okay, so how do I get all this other stuff? Okay, no problem. So what did we do here? How do we get, look, so we divided by 2 right here. So it's sort of the opposite. So here you're multiplying by 2, so you just divide by 2. to get the next one. So if I'm dividing by 2, so pi over 2 divided by 2 is multiplying by a half. That's pi over 4. Pi divided by 2 is pi over 2. So you need new radian measures. 3 pi over 2 divided by 2, aka times a half, is 3 pi over 4. And pi, so that makes sense, right? 0, a fourth, 2/4, which is a half, 3/4, and 4/4. Okay, so, whoop, this part right here is my new coordinates. 0, pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. So rather than go from 0 to pi, 0 to 2 pi, now we're just going 0 to pi. So 0, 0, put 1, negative 1. So 0, and then I got 1 here. Pi over 2 is 0. Bam. 3 pi over 4 is negative 1. Bam. And then pi is 0. Whoop. Bam. Okay, got it. All right, so that is sine, y equals sine of 2 theta or 2x right there. That's how it looks. The period is just shorter, so it looks the same. The amplitude is the same, so 1 and negative 1. Got it. Okay, so what I would do if I were you, I would pause the video, and I would do this again in my notes so I'd practice it because I'm going to do something else next, okay? See if you can get y equals 2 theta without looking at your notes or looking just a little bit. Okay, pause the video, go. All right, great. Welcome back. So here we go. Y equals sine of 1/2 x now. Damn. Okay. So the period is going to change because we're inside the sine. Okay. So doot, doot, doot. I can do this if I want. So you got 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. We always start here. Okay. So we got 1, 0, 0, 1. Negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. See how fast I'm doing it? It should be real quick, setting up your stuff, okay? So the period is going to change. The period is going to be 2 pi divided by b. And we learned last time that 1/2 was b. So my period here, or the length of one cycle, is going to be 2 pi divided by a half. Now what the hell is that? So this is the fraction bar, right? So that's 2 pi, not divided by a half, but multiplied by the reciprocal, so multiplying by 2 over 1. So keep, change, flip, right? So that's 4 pi over 1, which is just 4 pi. So now my period is 4 pi now. Okay. So keep that in mind. So let's get our chart, because everything flows from the chart here. So we got whoop, whoop, whoop. We got theta, angle. We have 1/2 theta, and we got sine of 1/2 theta, like that. Okay. So theta, 0, pi over 2, all the relevant points. Pi, 3 pi over 2, automatic. This should be really fast. And then sine, so just think about it, sine of theta. Nothing changes with the amplitude, so just put this down. So we got 0 for the y, then 1 for half, and then 0 for pi, and then 3 pi over 2 is negative 1, and then 2 pi back to the beginning is 0. So the only thing changed is going to be this. So rather than going from 0 to 2 pi like we normally do, now we're going 0 to, oh, over here, 4 pi. Cool. All right, so how do we get this? Okay, so what did we do here? So to get the period, I didn't divide by 2. I multiplied right here, multiplied by 2. So it's like the opposite. So this is dividing by 2, so you're going to multiply by 2. So 2 pi divided by 2 is just pi. Pi times 2 is 2 pi. 3 pi over 2 times 2 is 6 pi divided by 2, which is 3 pi. And that makes sense, right? 0, 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. Cool. And now these last two are going to be my graph. So let's just graph it now. Whoop. So we got sine theta, and we got theta. Bam. We got 1, we got -1. Amplitude doesn't change because there's just a 1 out front there. Okay, so now we're going 0, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. Bam. Okay, so start at 0, 0, 0, right here, then pi and 1, then 2 pi and 0, and then 3 pi at -1, and then 4 pi and 0, bam. And there you go. There is your sine curve, and now the period is longer than before, because usually it was just confined there, but now it's there, between 0 and 4 pi. Cool, got it. All right, so now what would I do right now? Yeah, I'd pause the video, and I'd see if I can do this one on my own. Since you want to confuse sine of 2x and sine of 1/2 x, okay? Ready, set, pause, go. All right, good. Let's try the last one I'm going to do. So what do you think I should do? Let's do y equals cosine of 2x. I think you're getting the hang of it right now, okay? So here it is. So cosine of 2x. We know that the period is changing because I see that 2 inside. So you got 2 pi over b is going to be the period. So that 2 is the b. A is out front, remember that, right? It's just 1. So the amplitude ain't changing. Okay, so it's 2 pi divided by 2, which is pi. So that's the period, which is pi. Every pi, you're going to get a new cosine curve. Okay? So now we're here. I'm going even faster now. 0, pi over 2. So you can go faster than me. Go. Pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Boom. See if you can get the points faster than me. Ready? 1, 0. 0, 1. -1, 0. 0, -1, and back to the beginning. You beat me? Yeah, probably. You're probably that good. Okay, so cosine is the x, sine is the y. So I'm dealing with cosine right here. Boom, boom, boom. So focused on the x's here. Okay, chart. Most important part of this. We have theta. We have 2 theta right here. And we have cosine of 2 theta. Bam. Okay, so all the relevant points, let's put them in. 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Bam. Okay, so cosine of 2 theta, nothing changes, so it's the same values as cosine of theta. So it's going to be 1, 0, round the circle, -1, 3 pi over 2 is 0, and back to beginning, 2 pi is 1. Okay? Now, what is going to change is this, the period. So now I'm not going from 0 to 2 pi. I'm going from 0 to pi over here. Boom, pi. Okay, so one thing you could do is you see there's 4 intervals, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. You can divide this by 4 and count by fourths if you want to do it that way. Or you see that we divided by 2, so it's the opposite of multiplying by 2. We're going to divide by 2, which is multiplying by half, and you can get your new intervals. So pi over 4, or new values. So 1/2 times 1/2, sorry, pi times a half is pi over 2. 3 pi over 2 divided by 2, aka multiplied by half, is 3 pi over 4. Back to pi, right? So you can divide by 4, or count by fourths, you get the same thing, right? 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Okay, boom, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Time to graph, go graph, go graph, graph, graph. So we have cosine theta and theta, and we have 1 and -1. Amplitude don't change. Now we got 0, pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. Just copying it down from here. Bam. Okay. Next, let's plot the points. So I got 1, 0, and 1, pi over 4 and 0, pi over 2 and -1, boom, 3 pi over 4 and 0, bam, and pi and 1, bam. Woo. So it's the same curve, it's just a little shorter this time. There you go. And obviously it keeps going forever, so you can put an arrow at the end, boom, 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 or just keep it going like that. Okay? Now, what I would do is I would pause the video and see if I can do this on my own. If you think you're ready, now I want you to graph y equals cosine of 1/2 x and then raise your hand and check with Mr. Irish and Mr. Rodriguez to see if you can do this without any help, okay? Ready, set, go.